Okay, so 8.3, define and use zero and negative exponents, and those happen a lot. So the main thing is we're going to go through this. Anything to the power of 0 is not 0, it's 1. Okay, so you have to remember that, so you want to write that. So a to the 0 is 1, 5 to the 0 equals 1, anything to the 0 equals 1. And then the other thing is we're going to deal with negative exponents. Okay, so it shows here, let's say I have 2 to the negative 1, I rewrite it as 1 over 2. So basically I'm flipping it, it's the reciprocal. And the same thing here is if I have a positive and I want to make it negative, I just flip it and it becomes negative. So if I have 2 and I want to write it as a negative exponent, I write it as 1 over 2 to the negative 1. So you'll see as we go through. So that's the main thing. Anything to the 0 power is 1. And if you have a negative exponent, if you flip it, so if it's in the bottom and you flip it to the top, it becomes positive. If it's in the numerator of a fraction and you take it to the denominator or flip it to the bottom, it becomes positive. So let's go ahead and start here with some examples. So say I have 3 to the negative 2. And the instructions are to write it as a positive exponent, because a lot of times they don't, unless they tell you, you don't leave your answer as a negative exponent. So this is the exponent, negative 2. So you flip it, so it becomes 1 over 3, and that will change the negative exponent to a positive. That's how you change it. So 3 to the second power, you simplify it, becomes 1 over 9. Okay, whenever you can simplify, you simplify. So again, if I had 5 to the negative 2, and I want to write it as a positive exponent, I flip it 1 over 5 to the positive 2 by flipping it from the numerator to the denominator, because remember, it's written, all numbers are written with a 1 underneath. 5 is 5 divided by 1. We just don't write the 1. And you flip it, and 1 to 5 to the second power is 1 over 25. So you can see it's very easy, just flip it. Now, negative 7 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So I could do this whole thing and do this x, y, z over 5 raised to the 0 power. It doesn't matter. If the whole thing is in parentheses, it could be huge. If it's raised to 0 power, it's 1. So I just want to show you a few little things. So say I have x to the 0 power plus y to the 0 power. You should know, looking at that, anything to raise to the 0 power is 1, plus this raised to the 0 power is 1. So the answer to this would be 2. Okay? Now I'm going to show you if you had this, 5x to the 0 power plus 6x to the 0 power. So the only thing raised to 0 power is x, so it becomes 5 times 1 plus 6 times 1, because the 6 is not raised to the 0 power, just x. So then it becomes 5 plus 6 equals 11. Okay, so do you understand the difference? Only that which is raised to the 0 power is 1. So let's get back to negative exponents. So say I have 1 to the 5th, and this is raised to the negative 2. So now it's a fraction. So there's a little trick. If you want to make this positive, you just flip the inside. So 1/5 becomes 5 over 1, and now we have a positive 2. So then 5 to the second power, 5 squared is 25, and 1 squared is just 1. So your final answer to this is just going to be 25. Let's go ahead and do this. Negative 8 raised to the negative 2 power. So this is a negative 8. This is not an exponent, so please understand that. This is the negative exponent right here, okay? So really, what that would be is this. So now we're going to rewrite it. So watch, this is the reason I picked this. it becomes 1 divided by -8. So this negative is not affected, but we flipped it inside. -8 over 1 became 1 divided by -8, but now the exponent is raised to the second power. So 1 to the second power is 1, and -8 to the second power, we're doing the bottom, is -8 times -8, which is going to be 64. So you can see that we've added a lot. We started out with the powers of the product power, then power to a power, then we did the quotient. Now we're dealing with anything to the 0, and now we're doing with negative. And by themselves, they take a little practice, but at the end, you're going to combine all of this. That's why you have to remember as you're going through what all these powers are. So I'm just going to lay them out and show them to you. If you're not here, you need to write them down and look at them because you need to understand them. Let A and B be real numbers, and when you get to Algebra 2, because I've taught Algebra 2 and I've helped a lot of people when we're at Delmar with calculus and various things, you have imaginary numbers. You're like, great, I can't even handle the real numbers, now I have imaginary. So that's why they always say let a real number, because as you move up in algebra, you're going to deal with imaginary numbers. And let m and n be integers. So that means any kind of a number, okay? So the first one is the product of power. So here, m and n, so just add them, remember that. Then here, a power of a power property, we've done that. So you multiply. Then here, if you have power of a product, but they're two different bases, an a and b, you raise a to the power and b to the power. Okay, so we've done all this. It's just a recap. Here's the quotient rule. A to the m divided by a to the n. Subtract n from m. And of course a can't be 0. You can't work with a base of 0. Then you're just going to subtract. And here, the power of a quotient property, raise a to the m power and b to the m power. So this is just like a recap. And now we've added anything to the 0. Just remember, anything to the 0 power is just going to be 1. And negative numbers, you do the reciprocal if you want them to be positive. So let's work with these negative. I'm going to take a few examples that the book has. 6 to the -4 times 6 to the 4th. So we're now putting properties together. So this is a base of 6 and a base of 6, and when you have multiplication, it means add them. So here, -4 plus 4 is 0, and anything to the 0 power is 1. So, sorry, I went off there a bit. So it simplifies down to 1. So let's try this one. A base of -4. Hold on. Actually, I wrote it wrong. Let me try this first. 4 raised to the -2 and then raised to the second power. So that's a power raised to a power. So the first thing you do is multiply. So now I'm going to have 4. -2 times 2 is -4. Okay? So remember, you show each step. But you are not allowed to leave negative exponents unless you're asked to. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it. 4 to the +4. Then we don't leave it like that. We simplify it and you put in your calculator. 4 raised to the 4th power is 256. So this is 1 over 256. Final answer. Sound like Jeopardy now. Final answer. Alright, let's try this one, where we start off with a negative exponent in the bottom in the numerator. So the rule is that we flip it if we want it to be positive. So by flipping it, we change the -4 to a +4. So the base is still 3. Now it becomes a +4 over 1 if you wanted to write. That's a reciprocal flipping. 3 to the 4th power is 81. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay? So now we're going to deal with negative bases. Or not negative bases, sorry. Negative exponents. So we can see the bases are 5. Alright, so our rule was to subtract. So I'm going to show 5. We've got negative 1 minus 2. Alright, so now I'm going to add them. Negative 1 minus 2 is 5 to the negative 3. But again, we don't want a negative exponent, so we flip it to the bottom. So 1 divided by 5 to the third, which if you put in your calculator, 5 to the third power is 125. Okay, and I'm just going to show on the calculator so you can look real quick how you do exponents. Whether you have a TI-84 or TI-83, this is mine at home. Let me try to focus this a little better. Okay, it's still not really showing. Okay, let me turn it on. Okay, it's still not showing it the best. Alright, I was thinking, let me see if I can make it a little brighter and it will show up a little better. Okay, got it down as far as I can go. You know what, it's just not going to show up really well. The main thing is when you put it in your calculator is to put parentheses around it. Alright, I need to dim it or make it brighter, but I'll do that another time. Right now that takes a little bit. So when you put it in your calculator, so I'm going to show you on the board, when you do that, you'll put parentheses, negative 5, close the parentheses, and you see like a little hat like that, and raise to the second power, and it will give you the right answer. Now later on, say you have this, and you have a negative exponent, then what you want to do is put parentheses around. Anytime you're dealing with negatives and exponents, put parentheses around your calculator and look for this little symbol, and I'll show you in class, and then it will come out perfectly. If you don't put the parentheses around, you're going to get a number, but it won't be the right number, so be careful of that. Okay, so we've done that. Let's look and see. We have a couple more examples. Okay, let's try to, okay, here's some, a little bit more to them. We've got a base of 2xy to the negative 5 raised to the third power. So I just want you to look at that for a second and see if you can write it out. Okay, so how would you write that out? You would say 2 raised to the third power, x raised to the third power, y to the negative 5th raised to the third power. So I'm showing you all the steps right now because I know you're still learning, and sometimes it helps to see every little thing until you have it solidified in your mind. 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8. This is just x to the third, and here we have to multiply negative 5 times 3, so y to the negative 15. And it says simplify the expression, so it's an expression, it's not an equation. Equation has equal signs, using only positive exponents, and that's normally what you have to do when you simplify. They don't like those negative exponents. So 8 is fine. X to the third power is fine. The problem is this y to the negative 15. So all you do is flip it to the bottom and it changes and makes it positive. So it's as simple as that. So now you're putting all these rules together that you've learned. So when you just had one rule, it was fine, or two, but you're combining everything. So that's why I keep telling you, anything in parentheses raised to a power, do that first. And then work from there and see how you can simplify it. So let's try another one. This is a nice one. 2x raised to the negative 2 times y to the 5th all over negative 4 x to the second y to the second. Ooh, that's a nice one. So we want to simplify all this stuff and then combine it, and at the end we should have no negative exponents. So this whole thing is raised to the negative 2. That means we need to flip it in the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is keep y to the 5th here. I've got the negative 4 here, and I'm going to take this whole thing, 2x, and now it's going to be a positive 2. So I flip this down to the bottom so I could change this negative 2 exponent to a positive 2. And then I have x squared, y squared. Hello? Thank you.
This thing.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Sorry guys, someone was at the door. So let's continue and simplify this down. So we are going to keep the y to the 5th on top. That would be the next thing. And then the negative 4, I'm just going to keep it like that. 2 to the second power, isn't that 2 times 2? That's another 4. So I'm going to kind of write it here. I can put multiplication so there's no confusion. X to the second power. Then I've got another x to the second power, this one, and then y to the second power. So I'm showing how I worked every step. So again, I've got y to the 5th. On the bottom, I've got negative 4 times negative 4. And I'm going to put the negative out here. That's just a number. Then I've got x and x here. Remember, you add them together. So 2 plus 2 is 4. And then y to the second power. So now we're going to look, because can I still simplify? Can I not take 2 from 5? So that's the very last thing. So if you got this far, that's great. But you still gotta, you can't have the same variable top and bottom. It's either going to be in the top or the bottom, depending on if you've got negative exponents and you have to flip. But here you can see, you can take 2 from 5 and you're just going to have 3. And then on the bottom you've got 16 x to the 4th, and that's it. It's going to be simplified just down to this. So look at that. You can see how I did it step by step, and that's what you're going to have to be able to do. So they're combining all these rules together now. Alright guys, hopefully as you practice you can understand it more. Have a great evening.